Ladies and gentlemen, a legend is among us.
You over here,
Josh,
sir.
very nice to meet you.
How are you, sir? Nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you? Nice to meet you. Please sit down.
We're live.
We are live.
Ladies and
What do we
gentlemen,
have a
we are
bowl of?
live.
Wow.
Yes.
It
What
looks
is
like
that?
apples.
Oh, some apples. I like that.
Apple a day keeps the doctor away.
That's true.
100%.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, in studio, a legend. An absolute legend is sitting with us here today. He is here for the film Lucky Day. It is in theaters on demand Friday, October 11th.
Yes.
Crispin Glover is here. Hello, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here too. And you've done just so much stuff in your career, and the fact to know that you get to play like a hitman the second I hear it, I go, "Yep, he can make it work." But how much fun is it to play this role?
This was a really fun role. I don't know if you guys have seen the film.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
you did. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Great job.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
This was a part that is well written. Roger Avary is a really good writer director, and it has some genuine depth to it. So, you know, those things that have genuine depth don't always come along that often.
Right.
So it's nice when there is something that comes along, and this was one of them.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because we had a conversation about that right before you walked in too. Because we said it's Crispin Glover. He's not auditioning for this stuff. Did you audition? Or
No,
did it,
this was
so.
very. I'd worked with Roger on Beowulf. Roger and Neil Gaiman co-wrote Beowulf, and of course I'm in American Gods, which is based on Neil Gaiman. His book of the same title, and he's the executive producer. And Roger had originally written it with Neil for himself to direct, and then Zemeckis ended up purchasing the script from Roger for himself to direct. And he had said to Roger and Neil that who they wanted to have play the parts would be who he would hire. And that's how I ended up being in it, which, you know, there had been a lawsuit about the sequel to Back to the Future because of the prosthetics they'd put onto another actor's face to make them look like me to fool audiences, which is illegal. But so I never had thought I would, work with Zemeckis again. So, and that was a very positive experience. So I have Roger to thank for kind of helping something that was, not one of the easiest experiences to have been through. So I really appreciate it, and Neil as well. Yeah. But so then I was touring. I tour with my own films that I make and live show that I perform, and I was doing that. And I think I had also been in Czech. That's where I shoot my. In fact, next year I'll have my next production ready. It's my third feature film, although it's not part 3 of the trilogy. That'll be ready for audiences to see next year. And I was in Czech doing something for that, and then I was touring with my own films. And I think Roger had emailed or something. I was like traveling overseas, something, and so he didn't get hold of me right away, and he didn't have my number, and so I think he ended up calling my father. My father's in my new film as well. My father's actor, Bruce Glover, was in films like Diamonds Are Forever and Chinatown, and he and I had never acted together for this until this film that I've made. So. So he called my father. My father, apparently, I just had dinner with Roger last night in the cast. We had a nice dinner, and Roger said that my father said, "Well, if Crispin doesn't do it, I'll play it." So, but I had less than I think it was exactly 7 days or something like that from the day that I read the script to the day I was on set, and I think that was like true for every.
So you
actor.
knew right away the second you read it. Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. It was obviously an excellent role immediately. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Something that a lot of people have been talking about recently, especially with the Joker, is how much we want to know about our villains, right? And I think it's interesting. I don't want to give any spoilers for the audience, but we do dive into your character's backstory a little bit to figure out why he is the way that he is.
Yeah.
As an audience member, do you prefer to know more about your villain's motivations?
Yeah, I mean, Well, villain, or the word antagonist, of course, is slightly different than villain. But sometimes an antagonist can be even an inanimate object. But like in 2001, it's a computer, but of course that computer definitely has a very interesting backstory and psychology that you get to know as the film goes on. It is the most interesting character in that particular film. Lon Chaney, of course, made a great career of often playing really the lead roles as that were the dark characters, Phantom of the Opera and a really good film called The Unknown. And I don't know, there's a lot of great performances that have come with the kind of character you would traditionally perhaps call the villain being the main character. Yeah, I think that can be very interesting.
Do you prefer to play the darker characters, or do you like to?
Well, it's been, for whatever reason, it's been the what has tended toward being what I've played. But it was like very early in my career. I remember people wouldn't really think of it, but I remember in the 80s really kind of not wanting. I was getting. It sounds funny, I'm sure now, but I would get offered like light, kind of comedic, romantic comedy things, which I had really virtually no interest in.
Wow. Like what movies do you remember? Some that were offered to you like that?
I don't really like to say things that I didn't do, but it was, there was a fair amount of kind of light comedy stuff that I would get offered or have interest in that I was not that. I kind of wanted to stay away from that for whatever reason.
That makes sense, though, too. Back from you're talking probably in the later '80s and stuff too. Yeah, because after the dynamic of what you and Leah Thompson had too, you could see why that would.
You can see where it would have happened.
Yeah.
And so there was something that I didn't want to. Yeah. Tread too heavily on that, but
because you were concerned about being typecast in the future, or you just don't like playing those roles.
It was probably a combination of things. It was like whatever the particular scripts were, they did not intrigue me. There is such a thing as comedic romantic. I love, for example, the film by Albert Brooks, what is it called? Modern Romance. Okay. That's an excellent film, you wouldn't necessarily call it a light romantic comedy, perhaps a dark romantic comedy.
More depth. There's more depth.
Yeah. So anything that has genuine depth, I don't really mind. Ultimately, that's what I want. But of course, you do tend toward being thought of as something, which is actually, there's the double-edged sword, so to speak, of it. On one hand, you want to be known for something just so you get cast. Sure. And then on the other hand, you want to explore different things.
Makes sense.
The concept of being known for something or being typecast as something.
But you did it differently. You flipped the switch because of that, because instead of doing what a lot of people could do, because look, for that profession, you want to put food on the table. You want to have the job. But you flipped the switch and said, no, I know what I'm capable of, what I can do. And now because like you said, for the last, 20 years, you've been able to play roles like this, and people that you don't have to audition. You get the role.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I have the perfect autonomy. Obviously, it would be great to be able to just make a call and say, I want to do this and get paid huge sums of money. I'm not in that situation, but I feel happy that and lucky that I'm in a situation that I'm able to do things that I'm interested in.
Well, let me ask you a question then, kind of based off all of that, and something you just said that I really didn't know when you said that the relationship with Zemeckis was made good again during Beowulf. I didn't know that.
For me.
For you. So the question, because there are a lot of reboots, there's been talk of Back to the Future being, and Zemeckis says no. Some people said maybe it could happen because look at everything that's happening now today. Everything's being rebooted. Now, because of the relationship, if they decided that there's a way for George McFly to come back in the fourth movie, would you be interested in doing that, or is that
there is, because of what happened with the second one, and unfortunately, it's complicated. I'm writing a book as well that will come out next year because I don't really like to talk about it in media, and I never really There was something. One of the producers, Bob Gale, who just he lies about things. I mean, he really does, and I had to respond to certain lies. I didn't want to talk about it at all. And I was essentially pushed into a corner because he was saying things that were so untrue.
You have to defend yourself.
And I had to defend just to let it be known that this wasn't true. He was doing things, essentially justifying the illegal actions that he did.
Right.
So he's trying. He consistently, and every 5 years, they do new kind of kind of thing to promote and make money from, and he comes up with new ways. He kind of keeps pushing the boundary every 5 years. In fact, I sent him a cease and desist order last time because I don't even want to get into it because it really is upsetting. But and he's the only one that does it. But because he's the producer, writer, people actually listen and believe to him. But he's a liar.
So it's a roadblock right now.
Anyhow, so I forgot what the question
was. The question was whether or not if they rebooted it, if they wanted you to come back.
And so for me, initially the reason I had the lawsuit was just it's expensive to get publicists. I just wanted people to know that that was not me in the film. Even to this day, people still think I'm in that movie. It's still really it's endlessly aggravating. Even with the lawsuit, there's what that illegal action that they did was. There's no one I can commiserate with that has had that exact same thing happen. Yeah. It's really bad, I promise you. What they did was really bad. Yeah.
Is aggravating part the fact that they did something illegal, the fact that you don't like the performance and people think it's you?
Everything. Think about it. If you're a young person and there's a major movie out that people think you are that person acting in it, and that person, I have no feeling of regret or apology saying this. I do not like the performance that person did. To me, that was a bad performance, bad acting. I would never have made the choices that person made. And people then attribute bad acting to me. Right. Yeah. That's really screwed up.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That's frustrating.
So I can never. I don't, I could make a lot of money going to these, photo things and reunions. I cannot do it because I would then be promoting this, people believing that I'm this bad actor.
Right.
Incredibly infuriating. And that then someone like Bob Gale goes and lies about it and tries to justify his illegal action by saying things that I didn't do.
Right.
To make it justified as though it was right for him to do something which is illegal. I did not do anything illegal. Bob Gale did something illegal. Right. Other people did as well. The reason I say him is because he's the one that continues to promote it. Nobody else does. I'm sorry to get so
aggravated. Of course, I understand.
But it's endlessly frustrating.
It makes sense. I know. I think the way that you laid it out.
And that people believe him. Right. People should be, any time in the future, if anybody's listening to this that has an interview with Bob Gale, they need to press him on the fact that he did something illegal. Yeah. They shouldn't promote it and say, "Oh yeah, Crispin's such a weirdo. Crispin's so whatever. Oh yeah, I was a professional on that film. Yeah. And the definition of non-professional, more than non-professional, is to do something illegal. That's what Bob Gale did. He doesn't work in the industry anymore, except for doing things like talking about Back to the Future. But yeah, I don't love talking about it, but I cannot help it because it is so aggravating.
Yeah, I get it. Well, I'm happy to hear though that you, like you said, that started this whole in the positive side. I'm happy to hear that you and Zemeckis have.
And everybody else doesn't talk about it. They did the correct thing after the lawsuit. They were quiet. Zemeckis actually stepped up, hired me in a good part. I had a good situation, so I can forgive.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, people make mistakes.
Right.
But then to exacerbate it by doing something illegal and then not at least just be quiet, but then to on top of it say things that aren't true, which is precisely what Bob Gale does.
It makes sense.
It's wrong.
I get it.
So it sounds like you said about Zemeckis that you guys have a good relationship now on your end and probably on his end as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't be hiring you.
I felt like that. Yeah.
Have you guys had any kind of conversation?
Well, I mean, we worked on the film.
Right, but about that, I mean, have you said?
No, I purposely, I read the book How to Be a Gentleman, which says don't bring up sore subjects. So I just didn't.
Right.
There was no purpose to bring it up. But it's like I say, I mean, I'd love to work with Zemeckis again. I think he can do really good work as a filmmaker. But I unfortunately, in terms of anything having to do with Back to the Future, I cannot promote that.
All right, makes sense.
Film. Although I'm actually, that's the other thing. It's like, had none of this happened, had there never been a sequel to Back to the Future, and there was just the original film, I would be there at those things and smiling and giving everybody a hug, all that, and all of these little things that happened. Well, I mean, the big things that happened, of course, wouldn't have happened.
Right.
But it's like. It would have been a celebration, just by the fact that something illegal was done to that extent. It's unfortunate. I would not have negative feelings about the original film.
It's understandable for sure, but swinging it back to the positive side there too, working with your dad. So what was that like? You guys had never worked together before.
Well, I directed him in my second film called "It Is Fine, Everything Is Fine," but. This film, this was the first time we acted together.
Got it.
And he actually also got involved in the writing a little bit as well.
How does that go though? I'm sorry to interrupt, because is there ever like a buddy?
Yes. and in fact, the film has taken me many years. It will be ready next year, and the film has taken many years to. I started shooting it in 2013. Every year from 2013 till last year, 2018, I shot at least one production segment. I've shot most of it at my property in the Czech Republic. Sets were built. Took 2.5 years for the sets to be built, so that was even before 2013. I started developing it in 2007, which is when I premiered Everything Is Fine, the second film of the trilogy in Sundance. This film is not part 3 of the trilogy. I'll do part 3 much later. But I developed it specifically for myself and my father to act in together.
Why Czech Republic? What made you go there?
Well, I do have some Czech heritage, but that's not really the reason. It was a good time to purchase. When I purchased, I needed something that was large that I could build sets in. And I wanted it to be a place that I liked. I had been there, and it is quite beautiful. And the prices, I bought it in 2003, so it was not yet part of the EU, and the prices were good. I got it for a very good price. It was a good financial investment as well.
And so you would call this like your studio there?
Yes, I've got 18,000 square feet of sets that I built in the former horse stables. That's just the sets. Then there's the chateau itself, which I can sleep. Everybody in their own bedroom, 17 bedrooms. I can sleep up to about 20 people comfortably in other buildings as well.
What's around? I'm going to move in.
So the cast and crew. What's that?
I said, what's around? I'm going to move in.
Well, I mean, there are plausibilities that I would rent it out in certain situations as a kind of a movie studio situation. The other exciting thing is that I started a not-for-profit 35 millimeter and 16 millimeter film laboratory with 4 Czech fellows, and that all that equipment is also at the property, and that. Means I'll be able to do every single step of the process from developing to printing 35 millimeter prints of the film.
Kind of a genius move.
Seriously, man.
Well, it was a long-term decision way back in 2003, and so I act in other productions, and I basically put everything into that.
It's incredible.
Is that when 2003 was when you
purchased?
Okay, so what about as far as the overall goal, right? So you're in, from your love of film has always been there, but at what point are we looking at just acting to say no, I'm going to branch off, I'm going to produce, I'm going to direct, I'm going to write? You've written a lot of books.
Well, I started shooting the first film in 1996.
Okay.
What is it? That took me 10 years.
Okay.
From 96 to, it was 9.5 years. From this first day of shooting on What Is It to premiering it in Sundance in 2005, it was 9.5 years. I'm very patient.
Yeah.
And and then I shot the second film. I shot parts of What Is It in Los Angeles and parts of it with my co-director on the second film. David Brothers had a warehouse in Salt Lake. We co-directed the second film, which was written by a man who had a severe case of cerebral palsy named Stephen C. Stewart. And David really understands sets. I think he's just finished his new movie of his own, which looks really interesting to me. It has like a game show backed up. He's very good with sets. I've seen some clips that look really interesting. Anyhow, so David lost his lease on the warehouse right before we finished shooting.
Okay.
And it was the concept for me was that the second film, I used the money from my salary from the first Charlie's Angels film into putting it into the second film.
Right.
It is fine. Everything is fine. Mainly for the sets. This is just the production, not post-production.
Right.
But sets, I love shooting on sets.
Yeah.
And so the concept was that I would be able to reutilize the sets for other productions, perhaps, in some other way. But the sets, because David's warehouse lease was lost, and he didn't know that was going to happen. All the sets had to be destroyed the day after we finished shooting.
Wow.
In fact, some of them were being destroyed while we were shooting on the last day.
Have you ever thought about like a Crispin Glover experience on your property? Because I would go to it.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
If Chernobyl-
I work. I work. It sounds funny, but my productions are amateur, and I mean that in the best way.
Okay.
I for the amore, for the love of something, and so I work with volunteers. So people come and stay at the property that volunteer on the film, but it's only 20 people, so it's like it's relatively well curated as to what is who and
like
when
a
it will
well-oiled
work
machine
out.
of sorts. Yeah.
Well, I wish it was more well-oiled than it was.
Okay.
There are certain things that I need to do in continue as I continue on in my productions. It's like I've worked in union productions for virtually all of my career, and so I know how it works. But I also fund the productions myself. So even with people volunteering on the films, I go broke every time. I'm used to it now. Like the first time I did it on What Is It, it was scary, and everything is fine. In fact, I had both of those. I'd shot both of those films before I premiered them because Steve Stewart had a health issue. So I had to shoot Everything Is Fine before I was completed with What Is It. But I went broke on those, and I knew I would go broke making this movie. But it's like I'm used to doing it at this point.
Risk, all risk.
Yeah, calculated risk.
Yeah. Well, tell me about go ahead, Rox.
Well, just talking about your extreme love for film, we've been talking about this a lot on the show recently, but because you are so well-versed, and I'd love to get your thoughts, Martin Scorsese recently, I don't know if you saw this, was talking about how he doesn't believe comic book movies are actually cinema.
Yeah. I read it. I thought it was interesting, and like I said, I'm writing maybe I didn't. I'm writing a book right now that'll be out next year that specifically is the subject matter is how propaganda functions within corporate entertainment media. And I feel like I admire Martin Scorsese incredibly. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to this Irishman.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it. Yeah. But I would replace the word cinema. And as much as I admire what he's, I think I know what he means.
Right.
But I would replace that with, I would phrase it differently.
Yeah.
It's about propaganda, and I think that not necessarily all. Like for example, I am looking forward to. I haven't seen the Joker movie yet, but I have a feeling I haven't seen it yet. I have a feeling I will like that movie. I admire Joaquin Phoenix's work as an actor, and everything I've read about it and the clips I've seen look to me like it's a genuine, depthful character, psychological character. which is a good thing. So it isn't necessarily that because something's based on a comic book, it doesn't necessarily mean or derive from a comic book. But at the same time, most of the comic books were developed in the 1930s and 1940s that were making these movies about for kids. And if you look at them, really what the purpose of those were is to give a comfort to the wars that were going on at the time.
Wonder Woman and Captain America, right?
And essentially I see that as being extruded now to adults. So these films that are these, for lack of a better word, the comic book derived films that are not necessarily character studies and are more dealing with comforting the American public to feel as though they're a righteous, justified police force in the world. That's essentially what the message, I mean, it's generalized, but essentially that's an underlying message of what's going on in our corporate propaganda. That's online one-point propaganda, and it happens a lot in our film industry. And I believe that's sort of what Scorsese was reacting to. I think the word cinema, though, all you have to do is put something on celluloid. I mean, celluloids, cinema. I'm not sure if those are related kinematic.
But I know you're saying so. That's when Danny was on Stern. He said
you could say
it's in a cinema.
Anything that's in a cinema, of course,
cinema.
Is cinema.
Right.
But I agree. I would phrase it more having to do with propaganda. But even then, you have to be very specific about it, looking at what the actual moral behind what the message is.
Right.
You can take something that is a standard genre and flip it. So I haven't seen The Joker. Something tells me that I haven't analyzed it. My sense is I'm going to like it, but I don't know. I could not like it.
It is a definite character study for sure.
Yeah.
But look, we only about 2 minutes left with you. So before you go, the film Lucky Day. Once again, guys, if you're watching here live or watching on the replay, sitting here with Crispin Glover, and the movie Lucky Day. It's in select theaters and it's on demand Friday, October 11th. Last thing here, you got a chance here to work with Luke Bracey.
Yes.
And how was that experience?
Great. Yeah, he did a great job.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about depth and morality. This film does have those things, and in fact, really, I have one main scene toward the end with him, and my character has. You can start to see what the motivations were, and he. It was not improvised, but he had certain. I certainly wasn't improvising. I can do that, but I generally don't. And the script was very well written, but he played around with it a little bit in a way that was very good for my character. He did in that final scene.
Yeah.
He was good. I really liked working with him.
Well, guys, make sure you check the film out, and then we do have to ask a question before you leave here because don't worry, I'm going to ask because we all we had this debate that is kind of fun because Roxy's from a different generation than myself and Josh. So we went around one particular music artist we wanted to see. I knew who he was immediately. He knew. You're aware who Yanni is, correct?
No, I'm not.
You don't know who Yanni is either?
Thank you. I'm so
That's
happy right
shocking
now.
to me.
I'm so happy.
Wow.
I thought that they were pulling my leg. I've never heard of this being.
Yanni, bring up a picture of Yanni, Cody, please.
I tend toward not listening to contemporary.
No,
music.
it's not. He's
He's a
Greek. Yeah, it's
Greek like.
Well, when I mean contemporary, I mean things from I tend toward listening to music from the very early 20th century or the 19th century.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
Yanni
Yanni was
17th or 16th century.
Yeah, he's like a symphonic legend.
Yeah,
of
he
like
sells
the
out
70s,
concerts.
80s, 90s.
I'm shocked. I was the first one I was wrong.
I'm pretty. I mean, something has to be playing all the time that you hear in a supermarket for me to kind of be aware of it.
This is more like
he might be.
This is more putting on headphones while you work type music. But look,
I'm so grateful right now that was your answer.
But I'm particularly unaware of anything starting from 1950 50s
okay.
onward.
Yeah, he's not. He's like
Miley Cyrus.
I do know her. Anybody
checking.
that you see that you're
It's
kind
pop
of
culture.
inundated
Right,
with,
right.
that's how I do become aware of contemporary things.
Listen, it was a pleasure to talk
Yeah,
to you.
you too.
First, and
Thanks
thanks
very
for
much.
being
Thank
so
you.
honest
Yeah.
and open. And
Yeah.
once again, the movie is Lucky Day.
I
Everyone-
hope they won't just take that clip of me talking about Bob Gale and only put that if they take it, put it in context. Because often, if I get asked about those, I have to start pulling back on it because that's what people see me talking about. But it is hard to
I get
not
it.
not.
I think
react.
everybody understands.
It's your
that.
life. It's your life.
Yeah, because when you hear it up top, because I never knew. I knew that you weren't in the movie, but I never knew why. And you hear things, and the first thing you hear, especially, you have a bigger platform now to get your story out there too. Because back then it was, he wanted more money, and that was
That's
it.
that. Yeah, it's
But
frustrating.
we can get all into it next
but
time.
I do want people to see Lucky Day. And I
Please
had a
see
great
Lucky
time
Day.
with
Go
it.
and see the
Yeah.
movie. Crispin Glover's here. We got to let you go here too. You have a lot
Yeah.
to talk about. So thank
Yeah.
you again,
Thank
and
you
we'll
too.
see you next time, guys. We'll be
Appreciate it.
back after the break.